Hi there, I'm Leah, and welcome to the House of Hormones podcast. Welcome to the House of Hormones podcast, the beautiful Jen Moore. Jen, I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited.
For anyone that doesn't know who you are, if they've been living under a rock, tell me a little bit more about yourself.
I'm Jen, and I live in Cambridge, and I am an endometriosis, adenomyosis, and medical gaslighting campaigner, speaker, author. I wish there was a handy little title just to kind of tie it all together. But basically anything that I can do to raise awareness of these conditions, I do.
You could come up with a little acronym, couldn't you? My favourite title that you give yourself is medical gaslighting campaigner. I love that.
Yeah, it's something that I think pretty much, I don't think I've spoken to a single woman who hasn't got their own experience with it. And that to me is just, that's not right. That's not right.
And so for anybody that doesn't know what endometriosis is, give us a little overview.
So endometriosis is where cells that are very similar to those that line our womb, so they're similar but very different, are found outside of the uterus. So it can be found on any organ in any bodily system, and it's an inflammatory chronic disease. So there's no cure. We don't really know what causes it. And yeah, it can be debilitating. It doesn't have to be. There are lots of people, it's a spectrum disease, so you've got lots of people who don't have any symptoms. There are lots of people who have symptoms but can manage them, and then you also get people who are completely debilitated by it. It can be a really horrific thing.
And when did you first start noticing your symptoms?
My first symptoms were when I was 11, and my mum had has endometriosis. So I wasn't one of the people who, had never heard of it until they were diagnosed. It was always on our radar really early on. But we were just told by doctors that it was normal to have this sort of crippling pain and, blood loss so much that you're kind of passing out every month. I was told that was just completely normal and was just put on the pill for 22 years. So my first symptoms were actually when I was 11, but it wasn't until I was 33 that I was told that I do have endometriosis.
How many years is that? I'm trying to do the math.
22 years of being told it's normal and just to suck it up, basically, yeah.
At the House of Hormones, we talk a lot about the word normal being a trigger, and you are like another walking example of how much that word, like even if you hear that word in just when you're talking about other things, like say, I don't know, you're talking about a food recipe or something, like if you hear the word normal, does it just make you shudder? Because it kind of does to me now.
Yeah, it does. I think we've confused normal with normalized. And, all of these things have become normalized. That doesn't make them normal. It makes them common. And we need to kind of have this distinction between just because it's common, it doesn't make it normal, it doesn't make it right. And actually, what is normal anyway? I could talk to, I could put all of my friends and family in a room that, have periods and ask them for what their story is with their periods. And every single one would be different. So what is normal anyway?
That's true. And I speak to so many different women across lots of different topics in women's health every single day. And you're absolutely right. Every single woman has their own story and nobody's is the same. So you're so right. Like there is no normal.
No, we've just been normalized. That's it.
So I first met you in person. Obviously, I've known you before, but I first met you at your book launch. Can we kind of start giving you a huge congratulations? And I'm just so proud of you, and thank you so much for having me at the book launch, because what a unique and special moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I'm still processing it, I feel. So where are we now? Tuesday. So it's been sort of 5 days, I think, since. But I still feel like I'm processing just how amazing it was. Very, very hot, hottest day of the year so far. So I think we were all melting by the end. But it was just so incredible to feel that kind of love and support and to see just how needed this book is. And I have to give Bloomsbury, my publishers, a shout out for that, because we're not often given an opportunity to talk about these topics with depth and nuance. Normally it's a clickbait headline and then a little bit of information that's quite often incorrect, but to actually have a space to really get into it and to really share stories from people whose experience is so vastly different from my own, because they face hurdles that I never will have to worry about. To have that space was just incredible. And yeah, I'm so grateful for that chance. And I just hope I've done the community justice. If I'm honest, you don't get this opportunity often.
I mean, what I was going to say was that's really lovely that you're thanking Bloomsbury. But to be quite honest, I was in that room and I heard them thanking you. And I heard how they spoke about you. And I mean, some of the things they said were, they were blown away. And, they really did heal you and this book as such an amazing step in the journey of women's health. And they were so proud of you. I mean, there was a lot of emotion going around that night. And I think for me, I constantly talk about working with the House of Hormones. I'm constantly talking about women's health every day and how I'm in this bubble. And I feel like I'm in this bubble where it's become like, I think the conversation is growing all the time. And that's how it feels because I'm talking about it. And when I step out of my bubble, I realize how little and how, because I always think we've come really far. And then actually sometimes I have a bit of a moment where I realize how little we know, how little I know, how far we haven't come, if you know what I mean. And that was one of the moments, really, being at your book launch, where I realized, look at this room filled with women, all here for you, all here to heal you and this book. But this is the first of its kind.
Yeah,
and
it is.
That shocking?
Yeah, it is.
It's kind of like an amazing moment, and it's great for you, and it's great that you're changing this conversation, and you're, this amazing woman who's trailblazing the way for everybody and educating people on endometriosis. But you have to take a moment to think, why is this just happening now in 2025? And why, hasn't this been talked about more before? And there's something so sad about that. So in a magical moment, I also had the wake up call that, wow, it's 2025 and now it's taken Jen Moore to write a book about endometriosis and bring this out. And even your publishers were emotional about that, right?
Yeah, it's a really tough one because I'm just a patient. I'm not a doctor. I have gathered information from global experts and from patients, but I'm not actually a clinician. And yet I'm the one who is doing this and pushing this and going into clinical schools and teaching future doctors that actually they need to be caring about this. And you're right, it shouldn't be taking that. And we've known about, endometriosis is officially 165 this year. So that's when it was first sort of documented as what we know now as endometriosis. But actually there's evidence of it going back to ancient Egyptian papyrus scrolls. So we have known about this disease for a very, very long time. And yet it's only now that we are starting to realize what it truly is as a chronic inflammatory condition that can affect so many people, so many more than we thought originally. And to talk about it, and that is driven by patients. By patients who have just had enough of being told, no, you just have to put up with this. No, it's normal. No, there's nothing we can do. No, the only option is to bombard your body with synthetic hormones. That we're just fed up. We've just reached a point where we've had enough. And after this, I'm going to the Department of Health to talk to our Women's Health Minister. And again, the room is filled with patients, patient advocates, charity CEOs who were patients. It is definitely the patients that are driving this change. And there are some incredible clinicians, some of them were in the room last week, who are, driving this change with us, because we can't do it alone. We have to have them and us kind of driving it together. But it shouldn't have taken the amount of lives that have been, cut short, taken, destroyed, that it has, for this change to come about. It just shouldn't.
And the one thing that we know for sure is, and we can use the word normal here, it's not normal to be in this amount of pain and to think, that people that are suffering from this, it's not normal to think that you should have to suffer because you don't, and you should be listened to.
Yeah.
You spoke about
Yeah.
how you're educating doctors and you're educating people, and how you're just a patient,
You're
and you're
just a
saying, I'm just
patient.
a patient, How does that feel when you're, having to educate doctors? Again, is it this kind of, that's great and it's really inspiring, but there's something really sad about that, because it just shows how broken our system is. And from my perspective, on women's health in general, we know, and hormonal health, we know that on average, a normal GP would do less than 2 hours of education on hormones. And yet we're often told when we go into the GP, don't Google it, don't look it up, don't believe everything you read online. And it's kind of like, well, okay, but you actually don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. That's a big one. I feel enraged that we're in that position, but I always try and take a step back and look at why we're in that position. And one of my surgeons, the first person to diagnose me, he said to me, oh, online can be great, but there's a lot of angry women on there, so be careful with what you read. And Greta Thunberg said it, I think, just a few days ago. We need more angry women to be speaking up. So it's infuriating when doctors start bashing social media, because yes, there is a lot of misinformation out there, but actually it saves lives too. And the only reason that I can credit that my organs are saved. So I was at risk of double kidney failure after my first surgery because the surgeon missed so much disease. And it's only through social media and social media advocates that said, no, that's not right. You need to go to see an expert. You need to keep pushing, that I don't have double kidney failure. So
Wow.
I think we have to look at why women in particular are turning to social media for health literacy. And that's because the information that is coming from the sources that they should be able to trust is often incorrect, incomplete, sometimes patronizing, condescending. It's not very empathetic. And that's not to bash the doctors, because if they're not taught it, how can they pass it on? And so clinical education is really the key to unlocking all of this. And I'm working with Cambridge as well, because we realised that endometriosis wasn't on their curriculum. So one of our top medical schools in the world doesn't have endometriosis formally on its curriculum. And we're changing that, and hopefully it will be very soon. And when I talk to the students there, they are so passionate and so keen to correct the systemic issues of the past. This isn't about just a handful of misogynistic doctors, which do exist, just as, it exists in any group of people. This is so much more systemic and deeply entrenched than that, and we have to be looking at clinical education. But it's so infuriating when doctors and other people then bash the community that patients have created for themselves because there isn't that information coming from anywhere else. So it's a really tricky one. And if I'm honest, I feel like it's a new form of medical gaslighting, to be honest, to say they don't know, so don't listen to them, when actually talking about the different options and the limitations and the opportunities. No one's giving out, or nobody should be giving out, medical advice on social media, and that includes doctors.
Yeah.
Because you don't know somebody's individual case through a screen. So even doctors shouldn't be giving out medical information on social media. So that's a given. Nobody should be taking it like that. But to provide options for you to look into and to take to your doctor to have a conversation, I don't see the harm in that. It saved my organs. I know people whose lives it saved. So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that topic, as you can probably tell.
Yeah, no, same.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with everything that you've just said there. And also I think, people like to bash nutritionists or PTs, and listen, you should always speak to your doctor, but to advocate for yourself and make slight changes to your diet, or make things that might help you feel better in different ways, what's wrong with that? Like, I just don't see a problem with women advocating for themselves. And there's nothing better than education, and education on every topic, as we've seen in your case, where you've just constantly educated yourself and now being able to do things like change the curriculum at Cambridge University. but look, And then you'll still sit here and say I'm just a patient, right? But look at the things that women who want to educate themselves and use social media as such a tool, because you have such an incredible following of women who genuinely are relying on you. I mean, do you feel the pressure of that? Has your body ever done something weird or out of the norm? You've already went to the doctor, you've had your blood test, but you're still thinking, is this normal? Am I the only one that's dealing with this? Sometimes you just need to hear it from someone who actually gets it. And that's literally why we've created the House of Hormones Forum. Think your girls' group chat, but with an upgrade. The House of Hormones Forum is a safe space with zero judgment and a strong community of women who really get what you're going through, because they're going through it too. We're talking PMS, mood swings, cycle changes, cravings, all of it. And the best part is you've got real support with the House of Hormones Forum. So whether you just want to vent or you've come to ask questions, come and join us. It's given science meets sisterhood. So come and join the conversation at the House of Hormones Forum. We've saved you a seat. www.thehouseofhormones.com and just click forum.
Sometimes because look, we're so desperate at this point for relief. We all are, and we all deserve that relief. And so sometimes there is that pressure when messages come in and it's like, I don't know what else to do, please help me. And you're kind of put in that position where you can't, I can't do more than provide, point you in certain directions or encourage you to look at things and have certain conversations. But a lot of us are at the end of our ropes and we don't know what else to do. And I think that desperation is a real sign that something is not working in the traditional channels, and we need to be looking at it. But I think it was more of a pressure at the start when I first started doing this. And bless him, my husband Chris, he said, you've got to remember that you're a patient too, and you deserve as much support as you give anybody else. And I think that was a wake up for me. And I always tell it to other people who start campaigning or start wanting to be an advocate. I always say, remember where your position is. Don't feel like you have to do, well, A, anything, but B, more than you have the capacity to do.
Yeah.
And that you deserve as much support as what you're giving other people. And that really helped take that sort of pressure off, because I think a lot of us with issues like this, we're very empathetic people. And so we absorb that kind of emotion from other people. And so when other people are coming into your inbox and they're really, really struggling, of course you want to help, but you also absorb that sense of kind of desperation and feeling like you need to take on everybody's issues and try and solve everything. And it's impossible. It's impossible to do as one person or even one group. It's going to take an awful lot of collaboration to make a difference. And I think understanding that definitely helped lessen the load a little bit.
But Jen, I think everybody that's listening, and even people that don't suffer from endometriosis but are maybe listening in today because they wanted to learn more, isn't that message beautiful? And isn't it for all women? Because you've said people that suffer, and obviously we're specifically talking about you today and people that suffer from endometriosis, but women in general do exactly that, where they just take on more and more, and we've been conditioned to look after ourselves last. And a lot of mothers I know talk about this and how they just keep giving and giving and giving and then never really turn that round inside. And what a beautiful piece of advice from your husband. And I want to talk about your husband today, because for a couple of reasons. We're obsessed at the House of Hormones of how we educate men, on women's health issues and on different things, without it kind of always feeling like a rant or without us always feeling misunderstood. Like, how do we engage them in the conversation genuinely so they care? And I'd love to tap into that, but I have to point out that I love the pictures of you on the way to the book launch and your husband like on the train, and you're like, he's finally reading my book. So did he? I mean, I'm sure he read like snippets of it on the way through, but was that genuinely the first time he's read the book?
Yeah, that is genuinely the first time he has, cracked open a copy and read it. And he's not a reader. So the fact that he is even doing it means so, so much to me. But I think at the first time I said to him, oh, are you going to read it? He was like, why do I need to read it? I lived it. Like, I
Yeah,
lived the
well,
movie.
and that's fair. That's a fair point, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is a fair point. He did literally live the movie of it. So, but no, he wanted to read it because I have to say one thing he has done as soon as we realized how serious my kind of endo was, he buckled down and started learning, and he tried to learn as much as he could about it and how to support me. And I have to give him credit for that because I don't know that I would be here without him, and what he has done and done for us as a relationship over the last few years has just been incredible. And I could only just wish that everybody who needs that has that, because I couldn't have done it without him.
And listen, not everybody does, right? And so we get it. Not a lot of men maybe are eager to learn or want to learn. But in my experience, I have seen a lot of men that when you open the door to them and, maybe don't make them feel like they're not welcome in that conversation, and you open the door and you allow them to have their own voice, their own perspective on these things, which obviously, unfortunately for you, maybe you were just in so much need of help that was something he had to take place. But as we know, for a lot of women, and we talk about this a lot when it comes to perimenopause, women just feel so misunderstood. They don't feel like their symptoms are understood, and then it causes like a real clash in a relationship. But the second that there's more understanding, I've actually seen that men, when you allow them to apply their own thoughts and their own ways of helping, they really do show up. And I know that's been your experience, and it's not everyone's experience, but what tips can you give other people to, open that door, to have those conversations?
So I think first thing to note is that when we first got together, my husband thought I was being overdramatic about my period. He will hands down admit that. And so, like you say, it has been a process of communication and opening up and learning, because he would he's got two sisters. He was brought up by his mum, and he's obviously had previous relationships, and none of them had issues with their period. So he just thought I was being a bit over the top. And it wasn't until, maybe even sort of 10 years into our relationship that he fully understood that actually something is wrong and that this isn't normal, to use our favorite word.
Yeah.
So there is a journey of that. And I think you summed it up perfectly in terms of opening up the conversation and allowing them in. And it's something that I even have to watch now, is that I don't rant at him and I don't kind of make him be like, that women versus men thing, because the day I got diagnosed, his life changed forever too. He became the sole financial earner for our household for a couple of years. And I was the breadwinner before, so that was a huge shift. He basically became a carer. Our sex life changed, drastically for a while. So much changed. His goals got put on hold. We loved to travel the world, and we had this list of places we wanted to go. All of that stopped for him too, and his life got paralyzed the day I was diagnosed. And it's only just starting to kind of move back to some sort of sense of what we thought our life would be. My fertility, I had a hysterectomy, that obviously impacts my husband too. So I think it's remembering that even though I'm the one that it's my body's under attack, I'm obviously the patient in that situation and need support, but actually so does he.
Yeah.
And every time that I sort of bring this up, either, on radio or online, whatever it is, the floods of messages from either people with partners saying, thank you, my partner feels so seen, or from partners themselves saying, oh my God, I didn't realize I could talk about this stuff, because I didn't want to make it about me and, make it that man thing, So I think that's the really important thing to note. And actually in the book, there's one of my favorite bits is an interview with Chris, my husband. And it was so emotional. I warn anybody who's doing it. And he's not very open about feelings. So it took a while. And we didn't do it in one go because it's quite a lot. But I encourage anybody to do that exercise with their partner when you're both feeling ready. yeah, just do it, because the stuff that comes out, it might just change both of you and how you navigate this disease or chronic illness of any kind in your relationship. And it was really emotional,
No.
but for both of us actually.
Yeah.
But it was something that, yeah, it something shifted in our relationship the day we did that. And it's the one thing, I think, if you're struggling with chronic illness in your relationship, just talk to them. And if you need to go out of the house, if you do it in a coffee shop, do it while you're having a walk so there's no distraction. Just talk, ask them how they feel about it, and say, you know, I want you to be honest. And because for the longest time, Chris was like, I just felt like I couldn't say anything. I felt like my feelings didn't measure up in the sort of scale of importance. And to know that he was feeling like that for years before we had this conversation, it was actually like, just, yeah, I don't even have words to describe it, but it meant a lot. It meant
Yeah.
an awful lot, and I would encourage anybody to do it. Yeah.
And I love that tip of, you know, go out for a walk, like schedule it, go to a coffee shop, go
Yeah.
somewhere else, and have that conversation. Or, you know, book a therapy session and go and have it with a third
Yeah.
party, or, you know,
Yeah.
if that's something that you can do. But I just really love that advice. And I love, you know, you found your way to do that kind of naturally. And after, and you said for years he was feeling like that. So it wasn't like this happened and then you just had this magic cure and you figured it out. And it's just so lovely that you want to share all this knowledge that you've compiled over the last 22 years, you know, with other people and to help other people. But, and the other thing that I think about men is I find that men are always so shocked at how little women know. What men don't know is that women know as little as them. So we have had zero education, and, you know, yeah, obviously, you know about loads now because you've had to go and do the research. You've had to do the work and do the research and educate yourselves and speak to so many different doctors and experts, and, you know, lots of whom didn't have information to guide you or give you, but lots of whom did. And so when men know that as well, I think that really makes them feel a lot more comfortable in the conversation, because it's not like this whole world that they feel like they don't know anything about it and have no right to talk about it. When they know that women actually genuinely don't even know the names, different names of their cycles, and, you know, different parts of their cycles, when they know that women literally haven't been taught any of this and don't understand it themselves, it makes them feel a bit more confident in talking about it. And so I would urge everyone to let their partners, brothers, bosses know, look, I'm learning about this and I don't know everything about this, right?
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I don't know about you, but my menstrual health education at school was once a month you'll bleed.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to admit that I was probably 30 before I realized the 4 different stages of our cycle. Like, what? That is mad to me that I had gone through over a decade at that point of this cycle happening.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. I knew I ovulated and I knew I bled. Like, that's ridiculous. We are all just figuring it out together. And I think that's such a good point, that, you know, it isn't that we have all the answers and we're lecturing you about it. It's very much, can we try and figure this out together? Because, you know, I'm lost and I need someone to help me with this. Yeah.
Exactly. And I speak to women in women's health who work in women's health every single day, and they still can't list the 4 stages of their cycle. I wanted to talk a little bit about, we spoke about the doctors that have supported you, and we were talking about social media and what we're seeing now, and it really excites me. There are some doctors who are incredible and they are happy to bring their voice to social media. And sometimes they get criticized for it, and that really annoys me. But 2 of the doctors who have hugely supported you, and I'm obsessed with them anyway, but firstly, Dr. Negat Arif,
Yes.
the incredible Dr. Negat Arif. And she's actually done a review of your book, and it's on
Yes.
front of your book, and also in your book. So that's so incredible. Tell us a little bit about your dealings with Dr. Negat Arif.
Negat is just my hope for the future, to be honest. She is phenomenal. And I will tell you, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, the thing that I love most about her is that she will admit what she doesn't know. And she will admit that she wasn't taught this, so she's had to teach herself. And sometimes she still gets it wrong. And maybe she'll give out some information that, you know, wasn't quite right. But she is one of the ones who is willing to listen and to update her learning. She'll go away, she'll talk to experts, she'll listen to patients, and then she comes back and she puts something incredible out there. And I admire her so, so much for that, for being able to say, do you know what? I didn't know that, but let me go away and find out. And I just wish that any doctor had that sort of inner, to let their ego go, I think is probably the best way of putting it. Because so many times we go see doctors and they'll just say, oh yeah, that's fine. And they'll bluff their way through. And I just think for a doctor to say, actually, I don't know, because there is no way that you can be a doctor and know everything about every single specialism, about every disease, every symptom. Like if for a GP, it is in particular, it is just impossible. But what Negat does so beautifully is learn and share that process of learning. And she is just phenomenal. And she is one of the only doctors, I think, that I have ever spoken to who says, do you know what? Complain. If you've not received the right service, complain. Because what you're doing isn't just making your situation better, you're improving it for everyone that comes behind you. And I just think that humility, she was like, you know, even if it's about me, I would take it as a learning opportunity if somebody complained. And I just think that humility and drive to make things better and to learn is just so powerful. I'm obsessed. I love her very much.
I'm obsessed, and I tell her that all the time. I'm obsessed with her. She is an incredible force for good and a trailblazer, just like you, in the women's health space. So I'm obsessed with her. And then as well, Dr. Louise Newson has also supported you so much as well. So tell us a little bit about that. So you've got a doctor's appointment coming up and you're just trying to figure out what the hell is going on with your body. You need our free symptom tracker. It's like the receipts folder for your hormones. You can track the bloat, the mood swings, the brain fog, the mystery acne, and then roll it all into your next appointment like a hormonal pro. No more being brushed off or told it's all in your head. You've got the data. Download it for free today from our website and start advocating for yourself. www.thehouseofhormones.com and head to our free download section.
So Louise came into my life after my hysterectomy, actually, through a mutual acquaintance that we knew. And I was really struggling with my hormones, and I had my ovaries retained. So we tried to preserve them. And what I never knew, again, completely admitting my own gaps in knowledge here, I didn't realize I would still have a cycle. Because, of course, you still have your ovaries, so it makes perfect sense that you would still have a cycle. But I did not expect it, and my hormones were going haywire. And I went to the GP, and they said, no, you've got your ovaries.
How old were you then? How many years ago was this?
I was 34, just turned 34 when I had my hysterectomy. And I went to the GP, and yeah, they were just like, it's impossible, you've got your hormones. Even though my surgeon had said, your ovaries might be temperamental, they might give up, we don't know, but we're going to try and preserve them. But go to your GP if you experience any of this. And I went to the GP and I said, I've been given this list by my surgeon, and I basically tick off everything. And they were like, oh, it's so annoying when surgeons give out lists like this because people think they have things when they don't, is what I was told. So I met Louise. And we were just talking about that, and she asked how I was after my hysterectomy, and I shared that story, and she was like, no, that is not good enough. And she has supported me personally through so much over the last couple of years when it comes to hormones and my own hormone health, and also professionally as well. She is just phenomenal, and I think any woman that goes against the standard of what we're expected to see in any industry, I think they open themselves up for attack. And I've experienced it too, and I know Louise has, and I I just admire her so much for still pushing forward and
Yeah.
just trying to make things better for women. Completely doesn't matter to her what other noise is happening around her. Her sole being is to make things better for women. And to be honest, between Negat and Louise, like, there were just, I can't think of two people that inspire me as much as them. I think they're just incredible.
And I think in a nutshell, that's what your book launch was like. It was just a room filled with women, inspiring women, advocating for women, lifting up women, and that's the movement you're creating. That night was happening because of you, because of your book, because of what you're doing. But you have created this movement and you are bringing women together to inspire each other and lift each other up. And it's just so important. For anyone that gets your book and is reading your book, which chapter do you think resonates most with women that are feeling overwhelmed and alone?
Ooh, that's like asking me to pick a favorite. Do you know? I'm gonna say perhaps the mental health chapter. So there's a chapter called Not All Endo Pain is Physical, and it looks at mental health. And mental health is a really difficult one when you've got a condition that is dismissed as often as endo is, because sometimes our mental health has been as weaponized against us. It's all in your head. It's just stress. You're just being a bit dramatic. I think you need therapy. It's been weaponized against us for so long. So it's a really nuanced topic to navigate. But there's a list in there of just some of the different emotions that you might feel through your endometriosis journey, whether that's trying to get a diagnosis, just been diagnosed, living with it. And I honestly, when I put that together, it was like something clicked for myself even. And I've had lots of therapy over the last few years, but even then it was actually putting together all these emotions and understanding that I can hold more than one emotion at the same time. We are very complex things as humans, and more than one thing can be true in one go. So take diagnosis, for example. You can be relieved that somebody's listened to you and found out an answer, but you can also be nervous for the future. You can be feeling guilt for whatever reason. And I think just remembering that it's okay if it's all a bit confusing and a bit overwhelming. I think that is really important, just to know what you're going through. You're not alone. You are not alone in that. And I think, that would probably be the one. If you had to, pin me down and make me choose, I would probably say that one, for if you were looking for something to help with overwhelm and that kind of thing.
I absolutely love that. You talk so much about reclaiming life beyond the condition. And I love, even that line that you use. I love it so much. What tools can you advise people to use to be able to do that?
I think the important thing to remember is that there's no cure. So endometriosis is chronic. It is a lifelong condition. Some people get fantastic results after a certain treatment and other people don't. So it's really important to remember that it's all very nuanced, very individualized, and very personal to you. But you have to find a way, whatever way that is, to live your life with it. And because there's no cure, you've got no choice. You've got to at some point do that. And I think for me, again, I'm making him sound so good. I probably bigging him up all the time, but my husband said something else. For someone who doesn't deal with his emotions very well, he can be very, very wise. And he said to me that you just have to remember the person underneath it. And I think for me, that is the biggest piece of advice, or the biggest thing I can say. And it doesn't happen easily or overnight or perfectly. And even now, I struggle with it. I do worry sometimes people look maybe at my Instagram or something and think I'm okay and got it all together, and I don't struggle. And that is not the case at all. I definitely do still struggle and have the moments where endometriosis just feels so overwhelming and all consuming. But it's just remembering who you are underneath it, the human, what goals you have, what dreams you have, what do you like, what hobbies do you have. You're still this person that you always were and always will be underneath it all, and you might have to adapt some of those things. So if you have a hobby, whatever it is, you might have to adapt how you access that hobby, but just remember who you are underneath it, because that is one thing endo can never take away from you.
Wow, it's such good advice. And again, I know we're here talking about endometriosis, but that just applies for so many different things that so many different women will be going through. We had the incredible Amy Walsh from Emmerdale on talking about PCOS, and a lot of these conditions, it's not to group them together just as women's problems, but the point is you're speaking so beautifully about mental health and about tools to continue on your life and remembering who you are, and that applies across the board for whatever you're suffering from. Also, so many women suffering from perimenopause. I want to go into the hormonal shifts, because obviously you spoke about keeping your ovaries, and I just want to talk quite candidly about how what your journey has been since then, and how you dealt with, as a 30-something-year-old, how you dealt with those hormonal shifts.
Not very well is is probably the bluntest answer, because at the first I didn't understand what was happening. You go through a hysterectomy, that even if your ovaries are retained, that's a lot of trauma in that region, and so mine were definitely very temperamental, and for a long time they were all over the show, and it felt like I was in perimenopause. I thought they had just gone and they'd just given up the ghost, to be honest. But what I realized, actually, through Louise also tested, and it turned out I was very, very low in testosterone, and which is an anti-inflammatory hormone. It's got so many uses in the female body, and I don't think many women realize we have testosterone. It isn't a male hormone. We have it, and it has lots of uses. And so when I started that, I noticed such a change. And it's so hard, though, for women to be accessing testosterone. It's so impossible. I don't understand why.
Basically, women basically have to lie, or not lie, but women basically have to say the words, I have no libido. And I'm just so pleased that you led with, the second you said testosterone, you led with, it's an anti-inflammatory, it has so many benefits, because it is so beneficial for women, including their moods, which is one of the biggest issues with women is low mood, changing mood, etc. And actually, and loss of joy, just overall, and that's not talked about, and no one knows about that. You're so right. People think it's a male hormone. We've always produced it. So, I'm so pleased that you're saying that, because that's for women that are perimenopausal. This is a huge thing.
Whether it's natural or surgical, just get your testosterone checked. And the thing is, libido, the original meaning of libido was not sex drive. It was like energy and zest for life and sort of joie de vivre. It wasn't sex drive, but it has become sex drive. And it's like you say, normally only when we go in and we say, oh, I don't want sex anymore, that suddenly they're like, oh, well, you better have this then, because we can't have that, can we? Like, it's crazy.
Blows my mind.
It
blows my mind, and it's almost really insulting, and has so many different levels. It can just make women feel like, what is this? That's the only way I can get help, is if I then don't want to have sex. Like, it's not even about that. It's about everything else that it can do for you, and that's completely dismissed. And so when you started taking that, what changes did you notice?
I noticed it was the energy and obviously I suffer from fatigue. I've got multiple chronic illnesses, so I suffer from fatigue anyway. But before I started on the testosterone, I was just like concrete. Even the concept of getting up out of bed sometimes was just beyond me, beyond my kind of realm of possibility. And when I used to, obviously it takes time, and just the energy that I had. I mean, I wasn't bouncing out of bed, like I say, chronic illness life doesn't quite, it's not the best partner for that, but just my mood, it was like I could feel there were possibilities again. Mm-hmm. And things that I could do and things that I might like to do. And I can't describe that better than joie de vivre, and that kind of just zest for life a little bit, and that desire to actually, not for sex, but to do something again, And for me, it wasn't libido, actually, like in the modern sense of libido. Sex drive wasn't the issue, but it was very much that kind of get up and go.
Yeah.
It just got up and went, like it had gone.
Yeah.
And that is the big thing that I noticed. And yeah, it really did change things and really helped me out of that rut.
Looking ahead, so I mean, obviously the book is out, so for anybody that wants an amazing read, just in time for the summer holidays as well, Jen, I love that. So for Oh, isn't it beautiful? And I loved your dress at the book launch as well. You just looked amazing. Like you were glowing, and it wasn't because it was the hottest day of the year. It was no. Honestly, what was hilarious about that was a lot of us were like perimenopausal. So the fact that it was the hottest day of the year, we're all in this bookshop like this is. But it was such a wonderful event, and it's such a wonderful book. But what is next for you? Because in terms of the changes that you've started being made, you're talking about Cambridge University, for goodness sake, and what's next on the cards, and what are you hoping to see in women's health overall? Have you been feeling like your hormones are running the show? Been there? Same. Our ebook is your no BS glow up guide to hormonal health. We're talking facts, expert advice, and real life hacks, all in one gorgeously written download. So whether you're dealing with PMS, perimenopause, or you're just tired of Googling what the hell is wrong with me, grab your copy now at www.thehouseofhormones.com, and we've tagged it below. We've got your back.
So next is the clinical education piece, because we've really experimented over the last sort of 10 months at Cambridge with what works, what students respond to, and we've got it nailed. The students are coming back and saying that was their favorite session of their whole entire year. We've got it nailed. And so the next thing now is to roll it out, because we don't want to just create a pocket in a very privileged already area that doctors have heard of endo and kind of know what it is. We're not trying to make every doctor an expert. That's just impossible. But bowel endometriosis is extremely common. Find me a colorectal surgeon that even knows what bowel endometriosis is, and it's hard. So just to make sure that no matter what your specialism is, you've heard of endo, you know the red flags, you know who to refer to. That's so important, and I think that is going to unlock so much improvement. So that's something that I'm really, really passionate on. And the other one is the medical gaslighting piece. It's something that I am so passionate about, and yeah. I just through engagements and I see even more new forms of it evolving, and it's so deeply entrenched and systemic that it's going to take a long time, but it is something that kind of keeps me up at night almost. And it stemmed from something one of my surgeons said to me before my hysterectomy, because I couldn't have children because of adenomyosis and endo. And he looked at me and he just said, "Jen, I've got 3 kids. Maybe the fact you can't have any will balance out the environmental impact of mine." And I just, yeah. Obviously I was really focused on getting through the surgery and recovering. And so I tried to push it out of my head. But while I was lying in bed, like recovering, that sort of scenario just kept swirling back around in my head. And something in me that day broke, and I just said enough. I think we as women and in any kind of marginalized community as well, we accept a lot of medical gaslighting and internalize it in the hope of accessing care. And the fact that pretty much everyone I speak to who is a woman has said that they are more nervous going to a doctor about being believed than about what their symptoms are, that to me is just, it makes me speechless. So yes,
that's shocking.
Definitely.
Firstly, I am so sorry that happened to you. Can you remember how old you were when that happened?
I was 33, just about to have my hysterectomy at 34. So yeah, I was 33, just about to turn 34. But it's by far not the only instance of it. It's so insidious. My first experience was 11 when I first went about, my painful periods, and I was told that they were normal. And that's the thing. Medical gaslighting ranges from those death by 1,000 cuts of it's normal, just go on the pill, it will sort everything out, she's young, she's too young for this, or it stems from that all the way up to the really just mind-blowingly ridiculous comments like the one that surgeon said. But there's everything in between, and we absorb these, and then we start gaslighting ourselves, and we're kind of like, well, maybe I'm just weak, or is my pain threshold lower than everybody else, or maybe it isn't that bad really, maybe I'm just not coping as well. And just seeing that, it just infuriates me so much. So that is definitely in my future.
You telling me that story makes me so angry. I talk about this so much, so much. And I talk about how women have been conditioned to gaslight in themselves, like you've just said. Like gaslighting starts at home, and then we go to the doctors and are gaslit again, and it just goes on. And it just is so upsetting. And that's why we talk at the House of Hormones so much about advocating for yourself, as women, advocating for your friends, men, so even though this book is about endometriosis, but this is also a metaphor for women's health overall, and how to educate yourself on every aspect. So whether it's painful periods, or you need to look out for your daughters, your sisters, your partners, everybody needs to be educated on this, because then you can advocate for people and for women. A bit of advice that I heard recently, and I loved it, and I think it was Dr. Ravina Banat who had said this, and quite a few people have said it since, but I just love this bit of advice. If you're scared to go into a doctor and talk about, take someone with you. And when I thought about this, I thought, hang on a second, this makes so much sense, because as women, we're not great at standing up for ourselves, but we are great at standing up for other people. Like, have you ever seen, even like, again, back to the book launch, like women supporting women, like we are down. If you said to me, Leah, can you come to the doctor? I'm down, and I'll stand up for you, and I'll tell the doctor this symptom, and we can do it for other people. Women will always have your back, and we can do it for other people. So bring your friend. Like, if you are worried, and it's not because you don't feel like you can stand up for yourself, but you might forget something, and bring a friend, or bring your mum, or bring your sister, or bring your partner, bring someone, because it's the best bit of advice.
Piece of advice.
Sounds so simple. As a last thing to end on, what should mothers of younger daughters, friends, for people, for themselves, what were the early signs for you? What should people be looking out for with endometriosis?
So with endometriosis, it is not a period condition. We know that, but it does have a very close relationship to our periods, because it responds to our menstrual cycle, and that means a lot of symptoms worsen during our period. So for an awful lot of people, the first signs are related to their periods. So things like painful periods are not normal. If there's anything that isn't solved or soothed by a paracetamol or an ibuprofen, that needs investigating. If there's, your daughter is saying she can't do an activity, she doesn't feel well enough to go to school, that is also not normal. You should be able to continue your daily life. It is not normal to be debilitated by pain during your period. Heavy bleeding as well. And I know we're not taught, 80 mils is classed medically as heavy bleeding, but who is measuring their flow, please? No, but if you're noticing that your daughter or your niece or whoever it is using up an awful lot of product, like, products and needing more and more products because they're maybe doubling up or they're soaking through them, that's a sign that they're probably dealing with heavy bleeding. Or if they're flooding and bed sheets, for example, or clothing is having blood on it, then that's a sign to have a conversation that maybe, they need some support there. But the main thing, I think, is to open a conversation and instead of normalizing, like it has been for centuries, instead of normalizing that this is a woman's issue to keep to ourselves and deal with ourselves, normalize it being an open conversation instead at home. You know, say to your dad or your brother, I need some tampons. Can you please go and get me some? Like, I hid them from the men in my household growing up. I don't know why. My mum certainly never said that I had to or encouraged me to. I don't know where I picked it up from. I just assumed that I had to hide it. But you know, just normalizing it, opening up the conversation. My niece is the perfect example of this. She's incredible. She's 15 now, but ever since she started her period, she's been open, and we've had open conversations. And she'll get up and, you know, in the middle of a family gathering and just say, "Oh, I'm just going to go and get a paracetamol because I'm having cramps," because it's normal to her. And I do think that the future generations, the younger generations, are better at kind of doing that than my generation certainly was. So I do have hope that we will start to normalize these conversations, but it like you said earlier, it starts at home, and just, yeah, normalizing it as a bodily function, because it is.
Exactly.
It's actually pretty mundane.
Yeah. And you know, you're saying you're starting to see the changes in the younger generations already, but that is because of people like you. And you know, I love how you do that, and I love how you use your voice, especially on social media. I mean, one of the things to mention is the image, the Halloween image, you know, that you did, and that's just so empowering and so brave of you to do things like that. Where do you get the, you know, because obviously you've mentioned you have your ups and your downs, and you know, where do you get your get up and fight spirit to do things like that when you're sometimes not feeling
My
amazing?
nieces, it's my nieces. I have two, Ellie, who's 15, and Melina, who is just over 1. And I talk to my mum, and she has the exact same story that I do. And I obviously couldn't have children because of these conditions, but I look at my nieces and I just refuse to be part of a generation that allows that same story to be handed on down. And I don't quite know how I'm going to do it, but I just keep, you know, doing it. And it won't be me that makes the biggest change, the biggest difference. It won't be me. It won't be one person. It won't be one group. It is going to be such a colossal collaboration to try and turn this around. But if we all do our little part and chisel away at it and chip away at it from all different angles, making sure we're hearing from diverse voices, making sure we're, you know, tackling clinical education as well as patient education, you know, not stifling patient voices online and telling them that they shouldn't talk about this stuff, because women have gathered for millennia and talked about their experiences. That is one thing we are very good at: collective storytelling and, you know, experience sharing. And that isn't going to stop anytime soon. And yes, social media can have misinformation, but I think trying to stifle those voices is really, really dangerous. So yeah, it's not going to be me that on my own that does it by a long, long way. We all need to come at it with our own skills and our own voices. But I do see that shift starting to happen, which is very exciting.
Well, you are definitely a huge part of that. And so is your book, Endometriosis by Jen Moore. Such an incredible read. I'm so proud of you. I'm so grateful to have been at your book launch and to have been included. And we will do everything at the House of Hormones to spread the word and share with our community all of your hard work. And thank you from women everywhere for doing everything that you're doing. And it means so much. Thank you, Jen. If you enjoyed this episode today, don't forget to like and subscribe to the House of Hormones podcast. Your support really does help us reach more people and spread the word about women's health. If you want to stay connected, follow us on our social media. And here's something really important. We're on a mission to secure more funding for women's health initiatives. Sign our government petition today and help us amplify our voices for better healthcare resources and support. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you for being part of our journey. We can't wait to see you in the next episode.